Jolo's rhetorical framework is split into three parts: the rhetorical situation, appeals, and the surface features.
The rhetorical situation consists of exigence, audience, and purpose. Exigence is the motivation for writing, the audience is who the writing is for, the purpose is why the document is being written.
The appeals are logos, ethos, and pathos, and they explain the rhetorical situation in more detail and are used to get the reader to side with the author or confirm his or her opinion through persuasion. Logos is logic and it provides logical explanations for why things happen in order to persuade the reader. Ethos is credibility and it provides reasons for why something is credible so that the reader can be persuaded. Pathos is empathy and it uses words with a lot of diction or allusions to persuade the reader through their own emotions.
Finally, the surface features are diction, syntax, figurative language, imagery, and allusion, and they can be used in the appeals. Diction is the use of mature and detailed words that give the writing a specific feeling. This is why it is so important in pathos. Syntax is the way that the sentences are structured. Figurative language includes things like similes, metaphors, personification, and anything that shows how one object is compared to another in a sentence that is not literal. Imagery is a very detailed explanation of something or someone. Allusions can either be biblical, which means that it refers to the Bible, or Shakespearean, which has to do with anything mentioned in Shakespearean writing. All of these surface features can be found in the appeals. Also, two other surface features are juxtaposition, which is the comparison of two things, and euphemism, which is a vague way of saying a harsh reality.
Page 39, paragraph 1 says, cut off unexpectedly, he left no will as to the disposal of his property. It was therefore necessary to have a valuation of property. This is logos because it explains why it was necessary to have a valuation of property. Page 39, paragraph 1 says, I took passage with Captain Rowe in the schooner Wildcat. This is ethos. It makes the author credible because he had a first-hand experience. He shows this when he mentions specific names.
On page 39 of paragraph 2, men and women, old and young, married and single, were ranked with horses, sheep, and swine. There were horses and men, cattle and women, pigs and children, all holding the same rank in the scale of being, and were all subjected to the same narrow examination. This is juxtaposition because it shows how the slaves cared compared to livestock. On page 40 of paragraph 2, in delicate inspection, this is euphemism because it is a way of saying a harsh reality.
Page 40, paragraph 3. A single word from the white men was enough, against all our wishes, prayers, and entreaties, to surrender forever the dearest friends, dearest kindred, and strongest ties known to human beings. This is pathos because it influences the reader's thoughts and emotions through biblical allusions. The biblical allusion here is when the author mentions prayers. Page 40, paragraph 4. I suffered more anxiety than most of my fellow slaves. I had known what it was to be kindly treated, and had known nothing of the kind. They had seen little or nothing of the world. They were in a very deed men and women of sorrow, and acquainted with grief. Their backs had been made familiar with bloody lash, so that they had become callous. Mine was yet tender. This shows logos because it explains the reasoning for why he suffers more anxiety than the other slaves.
Page 40 to 41, paragraph 4. The thought of passing out of their hands into those of Master Andrew, a man who, but a few days before, to give me a sample of his bloody disposition, took my little brother by the throat, threw him onto the ground, and with the heel of his boot stamped upon his head till the blood gushed from his nose and ears, was well calculated to make me anxious to my fate. This is pathos because it uses diction to show how the little brother was beaten, which could relate to readers because many people have younger siblings. The words with a lot of diction here are bloody disposition, stamped, and blood gushed. This is also logos because it explains why the thought of becoming Master Andrew's slave would make him anxious. Page 41, paragraph 5. I had escaped a worse than a lion's jaws. This is a metaphor, which is under the category of figurative language, because it states that he has avoided worse fates than what he has been through, in a way that is not literal.